Alright, so today I just wanted to go over a couple things here, animation related, and this will entail getting to know animation within Unity in particular. What I have here is I have opened up a project that I've been working on very slowly throughout the past couple of years. Well, past few years. Uh, Pretty much an abandoned project, to be quite honest, but it's a nice think tank. It's a good sandbox. I've been using it as such, and it's all VR, so we won't be testing out an FPS controller just because of that. But we're also not going to plug the VR in here. We're mainly going to be working in the editor today, so I won't be needing to test anything. As such, let's get into it. So one thing we can do is in tandem, actually, because lighting is a part of week 12, and this video is, a general video, one that could be revisited outside before or after week 12, but mainly made for week 12 and the curriculum therein, which includes animation in Unity as well as lighting in Unity. Thus, we'll be going over some lights. I've relinquished my face from manifesting on the screen, mainly due to the fact that Unity has a lot of gizmos and gadgets and UI items. Thus, I don't want to block them while I'm, trying to teach you things. So let's get into it. Point light, spotlight, area light, but I don't have a directional light in here unless it's hiding on me. What are all of these? Well, if you took a look at the week 12 slide deck on lighting, you would have a fairly good foundational understanding of what each light does and how to set them up by industry standards. Not saying that you have to set it up that way, it's just that the 3-point system that is outlined in that slide deck is a good way to start. So in this case, I am going to, being that I'm expecting you to already know after going through the slides what each of these do, I'm just going to go into more detail about what the capabilities are. So for the directional light, typically, after placing one in, you can see that it's really amped up the lighting in my scene here. We can just keep the name directional light. Directional lights are interesting. You do not need to actually move them into a certain place. They're globally based off of rotation and angle. So just like the sun. So that is rotating in this direction or in this direction, right? Where is it? Well, we can turn on our gizmos here and find out. And there it is. It kind of looks like that. A little bit of a shiner there, a little bit of a ray coming off of it, and rotating that ray with the gizmo gives you different results. This would mean the sun is pointing from below. We don't want that. We're also in space, so we don't even want a directional light. Typically speaking, especially in VR, we do not want it to be real time. Directional light should be mixed, especially for VR. Now, there are instances where you may want to use real time and your game may allow that. Real time just requires more rendering power, more operating system power, more draw calls, because it's literally finding what light is supposed to look like on the fly at all times while you're navigating, while the player's interacting and navigating through the space. Now, it'll do this anyways, right? But if you apply mixed lighting, it's a little bit better because you are baking some of the light in and then also using real time. So it's a nice combo, nice halfway point. Keeps all the necessities dark and all the dynamic stuff moving. Dynamic shadows, right? Couple of things with lights, and this is synonymous across the board. So if you were in a spotlight, you'll notice nothing has really changed here. Directional light. The only thing that's changing is what it looks like. What looks like I don't think anything's changing actually. Cookie size, okay. And that's because of how directional light functions, and that's fine. Cookie size is the only thing that changes. What does cookie size do? Controls the size of the cookie mask currently assigned to the light. So any kind of light that's masked or that's being masked or is supposed to portray in a certain way according to a mask, that's what that's all about. If you increase that, it increases size of cookie. Cookie could have a texture. So you could have something like something that maybe you want to create a silhouette or a pattern or something like that, right? The fun thing about Unity is that you do get little insights as you're scrolling over. So don't be afraid to use that. Right now, we don't have any shadows, which is actually the most optimized you can get. However, that's not really how the world works. So if we were to continue on with the directional light, I would definitely advise putting at the very least hard shadows in, just so you can get some semblance of stuff. The problem is, and cascading of shadow, but the problem is that the shadow looks very jagged. Now, this is a combination of an interaction with the mesh and the normals therein, the normal maps, the normal face direction, but it's also what you're telling the light to represent darkness as, or rather not represent itself as, right? And in this case it would be hard shadows, which is why things are a little jagged here. Now if we were to go ahead and make that a soft shadow, you'll see that actually was the thing that changed. This is a different light making these harder shadows. This is the light we're looking at here. So if we go to there, this is the shadow we want to look at. Notice the sharp change in the shadow here. And this light more than likely has hard shadows, or there's something else going on there that's just not that great. Actually, it looks like it's a different light, a point light from inside of here perhaps. Yeah. So nothing to do with the other light, but our directional light indeed does interact with these facets here. So let's edit that. So instead of having such a hard edge here on the shadow, and this is just representing something up in here, like perhaps these little X points for the windows, let's go ahead back into directional light. You'll notice that this whole thing's a mess, and that's just because it's an old project, like I said, a sandbox, right? So ignore the mess and ignore the amount of lights. Like, that is an obnoxious amount of lights that no one should actually have implemented. Make it soft shadow, and let's see what happens here. Soft shadow, make that hard to soft. We'll go soft shadow on it, and look at that. A lot more natural, a lot more manageable, looks better, more realistic. And you would go around and do that to your other lights so that it could match. Soft shadows are indeed less optimized, so do take that into consideration when you're actually making things, right? If you ever get a pink color, that's due to the fact that, well, you don't have a material attached to something. So maybe attach a material. Or it looks like this because you made it look like that for lighting purposes, right? You want an emission to come off of that. and that's why that's there now. But I just wanted to point out that if you do have an object that looks like this, probably not an emissive object, probably especially if you know it happened by accident. It's just, it needs a material, so put a material on it. Very old project. Wow, this is horrible. This is disgusting. I mean, look at all the freaking lights. You gotta be kidding me. This is insane. Anyhow, um, sandbox, right? Moving on through this, point lights, and like I said, same features apply. So I'm not going to get into, I'm going to travel around different lights, and basically all the things I say will be synonymous and consistent across all lighting types. So whether it's spot, whether it's directional, point, right? Let's focus in on a point light. I'll press F on the keyboard just to zoom or focus more in on that. And let's see what this is affecting. This one here, we have a range slider. This is, of course, also on spot and directional. You have a range slider. It just makes things bigger, more pronounced, right? Not really taking much of an effect on anything right now, so I am going to make a new light, or if I don't make a new light, maybe I'll find the light that is making the craziness. There we go. There we go. Okay. The range slider is great because it allows you to have more control over, well, what's being illuminated, but also what is, how bright do you want something to become, which is, well, that's probably the most important part about lighting, right? There are color tables you can utilize. In this case, I'll maybe make it a little bit more pink. There are intensity values you can change, and this also is sort of similar to range, except range is going to touch more things. Intensity is just going to make things look brighter, or affect things in a brighter manner, right? So it doesn't go as far, but it's the brightness of the light is changed. We can get that back down near 8 again. Indirect multiplier is all about the indirect light, rim lighting, reflective lighting. This is the light that you see on the side of the darkest portion of a cup. So if you look at a cup and you have a light on one side of that cup, you'll see a little rim on the, so if you have a light shining on the left side of a cup, there might be a shadow that goes across the cup, and then there's like this little really subtle halo light that occurs on that side. That is reflected light, rim lighting, backlighting, etc. And that's what I want you to shoot for whenever you're creating a lighting setup. I want you to make sure there's a nice rim light there, mainly due to the fact that we have depth that we want to make. Sometimes games are not as depth refined as they could be, and backlighting helps refine that depth. So just keep that in mind as we progress. I want you to be aware of that. I want you to implement that and proceed as such with that 3-point lighting as much as you can. You don't have to be perfect about it, and feel free to experiment a little bit, So that's changing the color, and now if I change it to mixed, there might be a difference in the quality of the light. Looks like we're good. Now if we do shadow type, I kind of want to have some soft shadows, and let's see what happens behind the pipes here. And there we are, we have pipe shadows, right? Nice and soft, plenty of cascades. Looks like I have 4 cascades. The amount of cascading that happens on the edge of shadows, this is the edge that goes in towards the darker portion of the shadow. That edge there can actually be adjusted within your player settings, found in the build settings where you make your build. It looks like I also have to add this scene to where I'm at. Player settings. and you would go to, could try to go to graphics first, and we'll see what we got. All good. Now we'll go down to quality. This is where we're at here. So shadow near plane offset 3, and yes, I was correct, 4 cascades. What does that mean? That means 6% darkness, 13% darkness, 26, 53, right? That's what that means in color form. Kind of nice. We'll go over more settings as we move forward in the class, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew where that derived from in case you wanted to change it to 2 cascades, which would, you know, be less rendering. It would optimize your work, but you may lose a little bit of quality, so just be careful with that. I typically stay around 3. Depends on the situation though. All of this is very old Substance Painter stuff. This very generic looking actually, but it's a good example, a good little exercise spot. Windows are all wild looking. Cool. I'm going to turn this directional light off because I don't like it. Or maybe I'll keep it on, but I'm just going to lower the intensity to something like 0.2. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Problem is that we have these shadows. Well, I don't mind those though. Soft. Look at the difference in that. Did you see that? Look at the difference. If I choose to turn this off, watch. Look at that. Amazing. Big difference. So be aware of it, right? Don't discount shadow and the quality that can come from that shadow, right? Feel free to use free asset skyboxes too. I don't mind. That's fine. In your milestone projects. And the other thing I want you to be aware of is that each shadow should, if it's a point light, this one definitely is a area light. It's a point light, like this one for example, you'll have things you can do to make it vary. I'll actually flip it to mixed. And if you give it a shadow, you'll have these options that cascade downward. Real-time shadow strength, make it 1. Biases have to do with things like that are more based on the normal direction and how much shadow or light is taken out or put in. So I would keep it where it is. Don't worry about those settings. That would be something I would like to get into in a more advanced class. On to animation. Or onto baking light. I think that might actually be more of a technique that is important before we move on to animation. So let's do that. So if I go into animation, I'll open up my tabs, but then I'll switch back to the lighting window. Lighting window, if you don't have it yet, you can get it in rendering, lighting. It should populate like this. I like to keep mine over here. And for the most part, you should have an auto-populated new lighting setting. If you don't, you can make one. Just click this, name it, and continue. As for what it does, this lighting panel helps you generate lighting and is especially useful when you are utilizing baking. In this case, I have objects that are indeed static. Notice how when I click on this outside environment, Wow, the excessive mesh faces here. I'm telling you, it's a good thing this is a demo. You'll notice that all of it is static though, and the static property is checked on due to the fact that when you bake light onto something, it has to be static. It will not bake onto dynamic moving images, right? Because it's baked and permanent. It's not going to move with the subject. The shadows won't move with the subject, right? If we generate the light, it's going to help us find out how our baked lighting is doing. So baked lighting typically is found within area lights. So this is the only exception of difference here across all the lighting types. Area lights are the lights to which I would recommend baking with. You can bake with any light really, but the area lights are best for it. You can also make them different shapes, disc or rectangle. In this case I have an area light here. And I would dig into, okay, how large do I want it to be? Do I want it to be a little bit bigger than that? And you can adjust accordingly with these little toggle or these little knobs on each wireframe of the light. You'll notice that there's a line protruding from the area light box, and that is just showing you the direction of the light. In this case, it's pointing inward, and that is exactly what I want. I do want it to come out a little bit though, because I think it's not in the right place. There we go. So the area light is found in the same place you would find all of your other lights. From point to spot to directional, you just go to game object, light, and area light to grab it. You then obviously set it to baked only, which is area light, if it's not already set there, which it should be. You can also adjust the range, just like the other lights. You can adjust the width here, or you can adjust it with those knobs I illustrated. Adjust the intensity, etc., all that. And let's see what happens when we bake. If I actually were to bake, I would just select generate lighting and it should do its job. It takes a little bit. It's going to process. Sometimes things happen, sometimes they do not. And there we are. It has happened. We can see the example. Obviously, this area is lit up more now. We can see more. We can look at more. I have a 0 and a 1 on either side of the knob. I have info below it. A strange dial indeed. And usually it keeps loading until it's completed because it's doing more than just this particular light. It's doing the entire scene. Obviously this is a gigantic scene, so there will be many opportunities for light to emanate. Therefore it just needs some time to render that all out. Alright, and now we are all set. We're all done here. You'll see other ones are also illuminated now, other dials and boxes here. You'll also see that I have a little bit more illumination from the emission here, as well as some light pouring down from that emission right there. So baked lighting is used mainly on static stuff, and it's used to only target static images, or rather objects. As you can see, there's an excessive amount of lighting here. Be careful with that. Obviously most of this is baked, so it's probably fine, but I just wanted to highlight that just because I have a lot of lights in here that doesn't mean that you should also have a lot of lights in here. Please avoid that, right? That creepy aphid. All right, good. Basic but good, right? That's what I wanted you to get into. I wanted you to get to know all that stuff and understand how it is utilized. The baking process for light is a little bit more technical, but not too bad. You'll see a lot of stuff has gotten a lot better in the way that it looks, including those areas. I'll save my work and then I'll go to animation, our next step. Let's take something like this ball here. Just move it over here so you can see it better. And let's animate this. We'll keep it simple. I'm not going to go crazy here. Keep it nice and simple. This ball. Actually going to adjust the, just close that up. Some broken scripts in here. Wrong computer that I'm using, that's probably why. I'm going to get those specular highlights in there. I'll also change the color to something a little brighter so we can see it better. Something more like that. And I want to start animating. There's a difference between, and I'll actually bring this one down here. There's a difference between animation and animator. Animator is different in that you are animating in a finite state machine. This means that you can have multiple animations going on at the same time for the same object or different objects, as long as it's correlated to what we call an animated controller. So let's dig into that. If I go into the project, or rather, I'll stay in animation rather, and animator's on. Remember, I went to Window, Animation, Animation, Animator. That's how I got these bad boys going. And the window's up and ready for you all. We'll bring that up a little bit and then we'll go into our ball again. So we'll click on our scene, select our ball, and we'll begin to animate. First things first is you select your object, the one that you want to animate. Might even bring this lighting box down a bit just so we have more room. This has a rigid body to it for a reason, mainly because there was some interaction going on. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll actually remove that, and I'm also going to remove this because it's not a grabbable anymore since I removed the rigid body, so we'll just keep it like that. And I want to make a component for this. So there's a sphere offset here that was used for the grabbing of the sphere for the hands that are utilized in VR. I'm going to just keep that there for now so nothing breaks. Again, my console says a bunch of stuff. It's just because I don't have my headset actually wired up here. Create empty, and I will call it ball motion. And I'll place my sphere right on down here. May want to do something like this though first, where you zero out your parent folder or your parent group object, then place the thing you want inside of it inside. So zero out that, and then plug it into that guy, right? Once we have that all set and ready to go, we can add a component to the parent of the object, in this case ball motion. We'll type in animator, select. Now we don't have an animation controller yet, so we do have to create that. We are going to create an animation first though, and this is a just the actual movements and recording all of the data that you provide for the animation itself, the keying, the keyframes, etc. The movement therein, the time, everything. Balls. And we'll want to make sure that it's actually plugged into the proper thing here. We're in assets, we have animation folder, so let's place that in, balls anim, save, and there we are. Now we have an animation. It's also populated an animation controller for us, which is extremely convenient. That only really happens if you make an animator from the start. So make sure you do it in that order. Now we can actually go ahead and move the sphere. So we'll go in here. Notice how it hasn't changed. If you click on something like this, the animation goes away. But because we're still inside the parent, it just happens to be that we're moving the child, we still get to interact with the keyframes and everything else because it's an animator animation. So you could even have, if I right clicked here, went to 3D object, and I had a cube I wanted to pop in, I could do that. Cube. And it's inside of ball motion. I'll actually make it a little bit smaller. Bring it up here and over. And we'll do some interaction with that with the finite state machine. Why not? We have our ball, we have our cube, let's get going. So now at this point, we'll just start recording. I have my cube. I'd like my cube to go back to where it was actually. So a good thing to do, if you want to start wherever you placed your object, just go over here. Click on that little dotty boy there underneath the object that's being animated. Copy component. Move your object. Go back to the transform in the inspector. Paste component values. And there you go. It goes right back to where you plopped it down from the outset. All set there. Now, there are many things here to look at. Right here in particular, this is the number of frames that you have accumulated via the time slider or key control, right? It's moving up and down through the frames. One being 60 milliseconds. So 60 frames per second is most likely where we're at here with regard to our FPS, and that's good. That's what we want. Let's say I want to go up a bit. Now all I gotta do is move it down a little bit so I get that organic motion, and then pop it up to maybe 120, right? And it follows and keys in wherever you move it. You can hold middle mouse button click to kind of grab and go across the slider. In this case, I'll actually just drop it back down. I'll paste those component values again. But I want to actually go a little bit past the component values so that it looks more natural. Okay, good. And then we'll actually move these over. And this in particular, I just drag selected the item. Press play just to see how it looks. Nice, good. So that's one animation. I would actually call that cube animation, but let's continue with the naming convention actually. So for this one, I'll press save, so actually stop recording. I'm actually going to create a new clip. I'll create a new clip, and I'm going to call this ball bounce. You'll notice I now have two animations, and that's due to the fact that I'm using an animator, right? An animator controller in the parent object, ball motion. It's holding on to my animations. How can I see them? Well, they're in Animator, and we're going to get to that in a second. So if I press record, I can now go to something like 45 perhaps. And whoops, go to the sphere, bring it over there. And then bring it back. You can also copy and paste your keys. So if I right click, rather not right click, excuse me. If I control C, control V, it'll pop back to where it wants to be. And I don't mind that it's a little bit out of whack here. I'll actually just go like that. And I'll paste it there again so that's a little bit more natural, right? A little bit of a schism going on there, which is bothersome. The way to make that less ridiculous and less kind of choppy, go over here on your last frame and make sure that it is linear, and that's just going to smooth out the curve, and you can actually physically see it here as well. So if I actually press F on the keyboard, it's now linear, right, positioned. If I go back all the way back to the other one here, wherever we are, we can hone in on that. Right. This is now not curved, right? So you want to right click on that tangent, is what it's called. This is a curve, and that's a tangent. We'll just go left tangent, which is what this is, make it linear. It should change. If it does not, then you can just do both, and that'll make sure that each is ending in a very linear fashion, which is what we want. So if I press play, a lot smoother, right? There's not as much of a jagged insanity going on. You may even think about making this linear as well, just because it's so close. Might be a little jagged actually. Maybe not. Free smooth. There we go. It's better. A lot less jittery. Just looks a lot better, right? That's just how it is, and that's actually synonymous with what I was teaching you in Maya as well, with the dope sheet in Maya, or rather the curve sheet in Maya. So right now we have a couple things going on. We can play one animation at a time. One is the box, the other is the ball bounce. But how would we play them simultaneously? So they will kind of play simultaneously to an extent. However, it's not efficient. Sometimes you want to actually have things looping for a longer time, or you want them to, there might be more complex things going on. So I'm going to show you what we need to do. So if we go to ball motion, you'll see that we actually have our animation clips in place. This also provides interaction. So these transitions actually give us an opportunity to make triggers, event triggers and the like. So if I touch this magical bubble or something, then, well, I should be able to animate something, right? Like a sparkly particle effect, something like that, or the bubble pops, etc. That can happen with the triggers here, right? That's an opportunity for Animator. Now, typically speaking, there is some kind of default animation that'll play. But you could also have it set up so that, yeah, we have the ball bounce going on, but maybe we want it somewhere else so it's playing at the same time. So you could have it set up so that it's one after the other, or you could have it so that you delete this one here. You make a new layer called, I think this is the box. If not, then I've also screwed it up again. You would then go into your layer in the Animator panel, press the plus button, a new layer will populate. Then you go into settings, bring that weight up, and you can choose to have it override so it's very strong and it could actually play before the other animation, or you could have it just be additive. I would like it to be additive, and it'll just kind of move sort of in combination with the other asset that's moving. In this case, it would be, which animation is it? Well, looks like we don't have it in here right now, so we'll have to put it in. We'll go to project, and whenever you delete from the animator, it usually deletes it from the grouping in the animation window. So you just have to go in, go find it. Usually if you have good practice with organization and naming conventions, you won't have any issue finding it. In this case, ball bounce. We'll just plop it in. And now we should have an animation that plays simultaneously. Usually and typically this will occur in play mode, which we can't access at the moment due to the fact that we have all this VR stuff going on. Now I could technically turn that off. Looks like I was using Playmaker in here too. Interesting. It's my custom FPS here. Okay. Looks like some things are not working out, huh? Let's turn that off and see what happens. I wonder if we can just preview this actually, just from here. So now these should play in tandem. I'm actually going to get rid of all the all of this stuff. I think I just don't need it right now. See what happens. Oopsies. Let's see what happens here. It's gonna be. Could be. Okay, good. Yeah, I couldn't delete everything. That's okay. Anyways, so once you go through that, you should be able to see it sort of play out as you want it to play out. Obviously, I'm using a project that does not allow me to do things until I fix certain things, and I just cannot do that at the moment. So what we'll do is we'll just kind of play through what this is like if we're able to, but I don't know if we will be. This isn't going to go without fixing those compile errors. And that means deleting these or changing the naming stuff. And right now I don't have the appropriate time to do that. So what I'd like you to do is test this out. Go in and follow the steps I showed you. And just press play after you're done, and you'll see that the animations will be playing simultaneously, and thus the finite state machine will be of use to you. Now, if you were to go ahead and make a new state, because these are all called states, right? Create state, so that was a right click inside the animator, create state, empty. And you would then name it extra whatever, right? Oh, now it wants me to fix compiling errors before creating new states. Great. But that's how you make a new state. Typically, what'll happen is you would then have an animation of sorts for the box or the ball again, and you would actually put that motion or the animation into here. If you don't do it that way, then you would just simply drag the animation into the animator, just like we drag this one in, or the other one, and it'll actually correlate over. Okay. Good. Now, moving forward, I'll be expecting you to have some kind of animation in here. In this case, it'll probably be something fairly simple, but maybe not as simple as the box, right? Feel free to be a little bit more free with what you're doing. Don't and experiment. Don't just settle for less, right? Settle for quality, and not necessarily more, but quality, right? It's okay to be low poly. It's okay to keep things fairly simple, but I want you to challenge yourself. Don't just stop at this, what I'm showing you. Go a little bit further. If you need more assistance with the finite state machine animator stuff, reach out to me. I'm here to help, and I can also provide other tutorials that may be of use as well. Anyways, I bid you farewell. Enjoy the evening, and talk to you soon.